Hello everyone, I'm going to be going over how to get some UI set up so that we can have a start scene that's there when the game loads, and then we can either play or quit, and then when you win or lose the game, we'll get a win or lose message. So first up, I'm just going to make a new scene, so Command N, and I am switching the viewport just to a single view. And this is actually going to be a user interface scene, so I'm going to choose UI. And that gives me this control node, which is just controlling all of our UI. You'll notice it switched us to the 2D view. I'm going to start just by giving this a name, and I'm going to call it menu. And I'm also going to come over to the groups, and I'm going to be using a few groups as part of the menu to help me access things just a little bit quicker without needing to worry so much about the exact location. So I'm going to just click on the plus, and I'm going to call this group menu. And now I'm going to start adding the first component of the menu. So plus, and I'm going to add a color rectangle to have a colored background. When I click on it, you'll notice that there's this sort of anchor thing going on, and I'm just going to zoom in and move over to see this a little bit better. So Command plus and Command minus to zoom in and out. And so with the color rectangle selected, I have these anchor settings over here at the top of the viewer. And so I am going to set this to full so that it fills the entire screen. You'll notice there are these little red circles, and those represent the boundaries of the color rectangle. So I can click and drag on those if I want to change the size. The green boundaries represent the anchor. And so if this is set in the original location, it's going to add, if there's any extra screen size beyond the size that we set the game, it's going to add any extra space just around the edge that the UI is centered. Now, if we drag the anchors off to the side, it's going to anchor the content opposite from that. So extra space would be added, in this case, to the right. And I'm just going to undo that step right there. All right, if I switch back to the inspector, I can choose a color for my rectangle. I'm going to go with some sort of purple. I think that looks good. I'm going to go back to the menu node and add a VBox container. And this is just going to create a column that my content can be spaced inside of. I'm going to go over the anchor settings and just set that right to the middle. And anything else that I add for the menu is going to be added as a child of my VBox container so that I have everything just stacked vertically inside of that. So first up, I'm going to add a label, and I'm just going to rename this to title. And over in the inspector under text, whatever you want the name of the game. Now, there are lots of settings that I can play around with over here. I can play around with the alignment of the text, how that's going to behave. There's some wrapping options. I haven't created a theme, so I can override the default theme that's there. So I can change the font color to a different color. I can give it the font an outline. I can change the font if I've added one into my project folder. So if you want to access another font, just drag it into the file system over here. You might want to make a folder for fonts if you're going to use it. And then right here, you would just load the font from the project. Nice and easy. I'm going to just leave the default just to save a little bit of time, but I am going to change the font size, and I'm going to do something like 100 so that I have plenty of space here. All right, next up, I'm going to, with the VBox container selected so that that's the parent, I'm going to add another label. And this one is going to be used for some directions for how to play the game. And over in this text box, I'm just going to say, click to select, arrows, and AWSD to move, Q and E to rotate, space to place, and R to restart. All right, there we go. I think I want to align this to the center, so that looks fine. And I'm going to just leave all the defaults, but I could certainly come over to the theme override area and adjust the settings there like I did previously. Now I'm going to add some buttons to play and quit the game, but I want to have a little bit of a space before I do that. So I'm just going to come over to the VBox again, and I am going to add a margin container. And under layout here, I can add both X and Y margin. So in this case, I specifically want some Y margin, and I'm just going to set that to 50 so that my buttons are a little bit offset from that message. And I could do that in between the directions as well if I wanted to. In this case, I'm not, but certainly feel free. All right, and again, VBox container selected so that that's the parent. I'm going to add a button. This first one is going to be called play. And I can have a larger message if that's something that I want. Oh, and actually I'm gonna do one other step first. I'm gonna add an HBox container because I think instead of having my buttons stacked together, I want to put them side by side. So HBox container create. I'm going to drag my play button over it so that becomes a child. And my HBox container, I'm just going to come over to the anchor settings, and I'm probably just going to center that horizontally. Now I probably want another margin container so my buttons don't end up right next to each other. So plus, and then another margin container. This time though, under layout, I'm just going to change the x-axis, and I'm going to put maybe 100 over here. Maybe I actually want like 150 or 200. I can experiment with what I like the look of. And actually, before I do the quit button, I certainly can come over to theme overrides and start changing what things are going to look like. We have all sorts of buttons for the icon and for the font. So if I want to start changing any of these settings to complement the other colors that I have in the game a little bit more, I can do that. And like if I want to have a different hover state, like maybe it's going to go really light when you hover over it when you're in the actual game, I can experiment with what I like the look of. Again, maybe I want the size to be a little bit bigger. So that would be 25. Lots of different settings that I can do over here. I could add an image for the icon, I believe, if that was something that I wanted to have. You'll notice just a huge number of settings. We can specify the mouse that we want, and that's just fine. Some different options for the alignment of the icon. Maybe I want that a little bit bigger. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave most of the defaults. And I'm just going to duplicate that with Command D and drag it so that it's located after the margin container. And this is going to be my quit button. I'm going to change the message to quit. All right, so everything's looking pretty good, but I think I actually want to use this one UI scene, my menu scene, to have my win and my lose message as well. So I'm going to go back to my VBox container, and I'm going to add one last label, and this label is going to control both of those messages. And I'm just going to move the location so that it's right below the directions. I'm going to just rename this message. Now, depending on what's happening in the game, and I'm just going to put some placeholder right here. And this is going to be something that changes. I want to definitely align that to the center, and I'll leave the color as is, but I'm going to increase the font size so that the message really stands out when you win or lose compared to just the directions, which is pretty subtle. All right, so now I have all the different components I need, but because I'm going to have both the directions and my win or lose message, I need to be able to control when they're actually visible. So this is what it's going to look like when the win or lose message is up. This is going to look what it's going to look like when the game actually starts or opens. So I'm going to give each of these a group to help control that visibility in the code later on. So for the directions, I'm just going to call the group directions. It's going to be the only item in that group. Same thing for the message. And again, I'm just going to call this message. It's going to be the only thing in that group. So I've got these 3 different groups for my menu. Now at this point, I'm just going to save, and I'm always saving my scenes in the scene folder, though some people like to keep their UI separate. So if you were going to have like your own fonts, maybe other UI scenes, you might put that separately. But in this case, I think I'm just going to put everything all together. There we go.